Hi everybody, I'm Paige and welcome to another Newbie Dice Battle Report, Basileia vs Ratkin.
Hello there! I like to watch battle reports to get better at games. So I started making short, summarized battle reports that focus on learning points. So welcome to my channel, Newbie Dice. Do like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon if you enjoy my videos.
Alright, so welcome back. So this game is actually played on Universal Battle and played via email. So playing via email is where you can play with your opponent asynchronously. That means you don't have to play at the same time. You play your turn, you send it to the opponent. At his convenience, he plays his turn and send it back to you. So of course, a game like this might be played over the course of a few days or even a week. So to know more about playing via email, you can check the description below where I'll link you to a video that instructs how to do this by Death by Dragons, Steve Hudrew. So let's talk about me and my opponent's list. So my opponent's playing Ratkin. My list is Basileia. It's kind of standard, a little bit of fast alpha striking list with one shooting element, so on and so forth. For my opponent, he does take what I would call a standard Ratkin list. There is 2 units of shock troops, unit of warriors, and some chaff. He chooses Vermintide and Mutant Rat Fiend, Tango, 2 Brute Mothers, and the Demon Spawn. And one thing that I'm not too sure about is the Warlock, because it does have a lot of things on it, but it's also very costly. So of course I might be biased because View of Shadows is not very useful against me because I don't have that much shooting, but it's good against War Engine Span, for example. So the thing about Ratkin is they tend to spend, they want to bring a lot of their toys that support. That will be the Tango for that Fury Aura, 2 Brute Mothers for Radiance of Life and the Drain Life, and that takes up quite a bit of points in support. So if I add the Tango, the Warlock, and the 2 Brute Mothers, they cost already 575 in support models. That's more than 1/4 of the army, and I think Ratkin would be even more comfortable if it's 2300 because the support models will be about the same, where they can bring more fighting forces to the table. So let's talk about the scenario and deployments. So the scenario is invade, where you have to get majority of your footprint over to the other half of the table and crossing the center line, and you add up the unit strength at the end of the game. And straight up from deployment, I kind of got tricked by my opponent. So he played refuse flank, and if you notice that when we're playing by email, we deploy 2 units at a time, because if we deploy 1 unit at a time back and forth, waiting for each other to have time to deploy, that would take many rounds of to and fro. So we deploy 2 units at a time instead. So that's why you can see 2 of each number. So you notice that I deployed my first 2 drops fairly centrally, just in the field to get cover, whereas he deployed fairly centrally as well. And then I start to deploy left and right because I like to do a pincer maneuver where I swing in from both sides to pin down my opponent. So it looks like this, where I come in from both sides. Yeah, but instead what he did was he deployed in the center and he slowly drifted towards the left till its entire force is on the left side. So I kind of got tricked by that. And to be honest, it's been a while since I deployed against a refused flank force, so I was pretty much caught off guard, no excuses there. And so quite a bit of my forces are on the right side, and it needs to swing over to the left if I need to, if I were to fight and punch and defeat his forces, because he does have a lot of big unit strength units like the shock troops, which are unit strength 4, right? So my sisters on the scouting already started drifting to the left, and let's see how it goes. He probably won deployment and moved first because invade, I think you most likely want to go first so that you can reach that center line faster in relative safety. So he moved his forces up, and he has 2 units of lightning bolt. Sorry, 2 forces of lightning bolt, and so he dealt over here this demon spawn and the warlock. So 10 in total. He should have dealt 3.3, but I dealt 2 damage, and I resolved down to 1. So you can see for dice going my way is highlighted in green, and dice not going my way you'll be in red. So on my turn, bottom of 1, I moved up, and my plan was to try to hold off the left side as long as possible till the reinforcements on the right arrive, so that I can start to flank him. So they are doing a cross-country run here for the stuff on the right side, and of course there's a unit of warriors in the way. So one mistake I did, some of the thoughts process over here is that I put this ogres just touching the hill to see over it. Of course, the opponent can see me, but when he starts to come close, I'll back up away from the hill, and he wouldn't be able to see me. But of course, the mutant Ratkin and the demon spawn being higher than height 3 of the hill can see me. Another thing I did was I moved this Elohai regiment a little bit too close to the unit of shock troops, so I think it's just shy of 12 inches so that he couldn't charge me. But when he pushed forward in the next turn, I realized that I couldn't back out of his threat range. So let's see what happens in his turn. So here's what he did. He weakened the ogres, and more importantly, he put another 2 sets of lightning bolt into the abbess and wavered her. Okay, and this center unit of shock troops moved up and popped its plague pots, so it's forcing my Elohai to charge, because even if I back 5 inches, I will still be in his charge range and he will be able to charge me. So let's see some of the dice statistics over here. So earlier on, the dice went my way. This time, he still dealt very little damage, but he rolled very high on the nerf and wavered me. So that's represented by this red number over here, and the underline means it's quite an important roll, because if my abbess was not wavered, I would probably want to use it to chaff up something, to chaff up the mutant rat fiend, for example. So I have one less chaff piece to use. So what's my response? In the end, I still pulled back all my forces, and the abbess hide behind the ogres, right? And so the ogres is still gonna be charged by the two titans. The Elohai regiment also decided to pull back, because I thought that the odds of the dice were a little bit, it's not a guaranteed kill for him to be only sending 1 unit of shock troops in. And my sisters shot some arrows and got a lucky waver there. A little bit on the lucky side, right? So there's the number over here, 5.6. But on the other hand, my abbess dealt less than average damage to the warriors, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because he would use his Brood Mother to drain life and Radiance of Life heal it all back. So let's see what happens. So expectedly, his 2 titans charged in and killed my ogres off, and he pushed up the shock troops behind it and popped the plague pots. So more importantly, the center, the shock troops did decide to charge. But okay, so let's look at the dice. So he should deal 7.5 wounds, needing 6.5 twice to rout me. So if he dealt 7 wounds, he will need 7 twice. If he dealt 8 wounds, he will need 6 twice. So not guaranteed odds, but he did deal way below average, and so 4.5. So you can see that I've positioned my sisters and my Elohai to flank charge him in return. So let's look at the bottom over here, the center rather, the warriors against the abbess. So they counter charge and wavered and then pop the plague pots, because I did charge the abbess to chaff them up so that I can charge my foot soldiers and the knights in the next turn, and now he's fully prepared for it and he's fully healed up as well. On top of that, my abbess is wavered. So looking at these 2 titans over here, one is facing the left, one is facing the right, because there's nothing threatening that flank right now. So what did I do? Let's look from left to right. On left, I triple charged the demon spawn, the abbess, the knight, and the Elohai. Let's see who got wavered, who got weakened. Weakened was on the Elohai. So I did take out the demon spawn, and in return, on the shock troops, I did triple charge it as well from the front and 2 in the flank, and I did not even waver it. So, which is pretty unfortunate. On the other side, against the warriors, I'm a little bit on the lucky side though. I dealt more than average damage and wavered it. So let's look at the numbers, how the numbers fell. So this is average result. Red results are not in my favor, and yellows is in my favor. So all in all, I forgot to count in the weakness, but I think I should still deal about 6 wounds. So I think I should only need about 4 to waver it. But I dealt below average and I did not even waver it. On the other hand, I dealt above damage and wavered it. So his Fury Bubble is all the way over on the left side, the Tangle, which is over here. So let's look at top of 4. Now I made a mistake over here, so let's rewind one step. So after I killed off the demon spawn, I reformed my units, and I was trying to reform because the elo high is 120 millimeters in the frontage, while the knights are 125. So in order for the knights not to get charged, you gotta tilt your elo high a bit. So I was so focused on tilting the elo high, right, positioning the angle of the elo high so that the frontage of the knights were protected, that I did not realize that I did not pivot, or rather the way I pivot, the shock troops were in the flank. So that's a way big unforgivable mistake on my side. If it was a front charge, maybe I have a small chance of surviving. I think he would have to charge the shock troops in. One of this, what do you call this, the Vermintide in. The shock troops will have dealt 10 damage with Bane Chant. The Vermintide will have dealt 1 damage with Bane Chant, 1 damage on its own, and the Drain Life would deal 1 to 2 damage. So that would be somewhere between 4 to 6 twice to kill on average dice. So at least that's something, but a charge in the flank, that's a definite kill already. So let's look at what happened. So he did charge me in the flank and did kill it off. Okay, so over on this side, because I failed to kill his shock troops, his Mutant Ratkin that's facing the right side did charge into the elo high, which has a little bit of frontage exposed, dealt damage, but not expected and did not rout it. But however, the shock troops should have killed the elo high definitely on the second round of combat. So he failed to kill me, I failed to kill him, he failed to kill me again. So there's a pretty much a slapping of hands in the center over here. And so this is how the dice fall. And I think there's more. Yeah, so not expected to kill me. But he did deal above damage to the elo high. So over in the center, now that the warriors are wavered, it backed up and the Vermintide moved forward, and it moved forward in a very smart way that it blocks more than half the frontage of the warriors. So what's going to happen when my knights charge in is that it's skewed to one side, and when the warriors counter charge, it will be not counter charge, rather declare a new charge into the flank. So that's how reds can maneuver like this to get flanks from the opponent's front, right? So this is exactly what happened. So let's look from left to right. Firstly, I made that mistake, critical mistake on the left with the elo high, but then the dice decide to be lucky with me for this one, and I killed off one unit of this knights, killed off the shock troops, which is very unexpected. Alright, if you notice the average dice, I need 14 twice, which is impossible on 2 dice, right? And so I dealt above average damage, and I rolled 11 twice to kill it, and that's exactly what I needed, 23, because there's a rally 1 from the tangle. Okay, the Abbas charged this Vermintide over here. I was hoping that it would block off the flank from the knights, but it failed to do so. You'll see why later. So over here, in the middle of the 3 hordes, right, the elo high and the sisters flank charging took out the shock troops finally, and my early elo high did not participate in the combat. It decided to back up because taking a second charge from the, what do you call this, the Mutant Ratkin would definitely spell death for the elo high. So I backed up instead, and I tilted this sisterhood so that the Mutant Ratkin can't fit into this space to charge the elo high. Okay, I did have the priest over here to support. The priest does have healing, and I think that's what it did. He 2 off the elo high. He was at 8 wounds. So let's see over here in the middle, the Abbas charged the Vermintide instead and killed off the Vermintide, because I think on average the Abbas deals more damage. And then the knights charge into the warriors, and this time it did not even waver it. Okay, and on hindsight, maybe I should have charged the foot soldiers in instead, and because if the foot soldiers were to kill it and overrun, I could have stopped the flank charge onto the knights. So that's what I could have stopped. So the Abbas could charge forward as well, but it is an individual and it could still be overrun. And back then when this game was played, which was a few months ago, it can be contended that after overrunning over an individual, it might be in the flank of the unit, but it's later on clarified that it will be in the front. I'll show that later in my slides. So let's look at what happened. Top of 5. So let's look at left side first. The Vermintide in front charged into the Knights. The Vermintide at the side, because it's angled here from the Abbas is not center of it. So what it can do, because it's a long unit, right, it pivots and ends like this, clear of the Abbas, move a little bit and pivot again because it has nimble, and then it charged into the Knights basically. So it did this way and this way. Yeah. So it did charge in, and then it has support from being Chan from the Warlock onto the flanking unit. And then there's a Drain Life from the Brood Mother, and it dealt this much damage, not wavering it or anything. So the Mutant Ratkin charged into the Sisterhood, 14-16 nerf, not expecting them to do anything. Not expecting them to die. And so, and as expected, these warriors charged into the flank of the Knights and killed it off. So let's look at how the dice fall. Everything is in white, so I think everything's pretty average. So let's look at my response. My Abbas charged the Vermintide a second time and killed it off. So if you see this skull, it means killed off. So we kept the units on the board so that the opponent can see the position of where their unit died, because we're emailing. The opponent is not watching the game live. They load up the game and see what happened in the game. So we kept the units on the board. The skull represents they're actually already dead. Okay, the Knights charged the Vermintide in the front, dealing 6 damage, but failed to waver. I did roll a Snake Eyes, so you can see the Snake Eyes over here. Okay, this round my rolls were all pretty below average. You can see a lot of red numbers over here, but that's also not forgetting that I did roll fantastically well the previous turn to kill off that shock troops, which is over here. This 8 with a star over here. So I snakes on the Vermintide, not even wavering them, and then I dealt this much damage to the Brood Mother in the flank. So my Elohai flew over here because it is bottom of 5. We are trying to invade the opponent's side of the board. So I'm deciding to let my Elohai start making its way across to the opponent's half. Okay, the Elohai, which backed up, charged the Tangle in the front and dealt 4 damage, right? And over here I charged into the warriors, and needing 5 toys to route it on average dice, I only wavered it, and the Tangle is close enough to give its Fury Aura, so that's what it's going to do. So let's see what happens. So what it did, let's start from the left side first. So the Brood Mother that did not even get wavered couldn't cast Drain Life. It's over here in front of the Elohai, so it decided to combo charge together with the Vermintide to deal damage to these what do you call this, the Knights. And I think, yeah, tried to do damage to the Knights and wavered it, so it did do some damage and wavered it. And my sisters received some healing from the priest in the previous turn, so that it can last a few more rounds against the Mutant Ratkin. So it did tie down the Mutant Ratkin further. It got wavered, but it's not dead yet. Okay, and let's see. Before we look into this, let's rewind that. Okay, so there's Wizard Lightning Bolt, the Warlock Lightning Bolt, and I think it dealt 1 damage, failing to route, and then Iron resolved it back. So on the right side, this is what happened. Let's rewind one picture to show you. So my Abbas charged together with the foot soldiers, the men at arms, right? So what I did is it countercharged the Abbas over here, so it would have to center against the Abbas. So being centered against the Abbas means it's in the foot soldier's flank. So after it killed an individual, it can overrun into a second combat. So it started in the flank of the foot soldiers. So at the point of this game, when it was done in I think February, it was decided that it would be a flank, and so a flank charge it is. but it was later on ruled. So you can see this article I pasted over here. Andy Ransom asked this in the Kings of War Fanatics page in Facebook, and basically it's describing the same situation when you countercharge an individual, you slide, and then now you're in the flank. And Dan King, which is on the rules committee, said that okay, we have discussed this and agreed that we treat overruns after killing an individual like a surge. So it would hit the front facing of the foot soldiers first, and it would be considered a front charge. Okay, so but this is how he played. But thankfully, he did not roll well, and he wavered me. But he was supposed to kill me easily. Just 3 needed to rout, and instead he wavered me, and so that spells the end of the game for him pretty much, because of that he was not able to get into my half of the board. So even if he killed me, he would still be on his half of the board, right? He would need a turn 7 to get in, but now that he only wavered me, he couldn't even get in on turn 7, right? So you can see this red line I drew is the center of the board. Right now where it stands, he does have a mutant red fiend, and that's only 1, right? While I have the elo high, and it's still bottom of 6, I can still move it. And then I have the elo high that can get into the opponent's half. Okay, the foot soldiers were still in the opponent's half as well. So what I did, because let's do from left to right. So my knights killed the Vermintide after the second charge. The Brood Mother got killed off by the Abbess, and then my knights overran forward, but not enough to get to the other half. My elo high flew off into the other half of the board. These sisters were wavered, can't do anything. So because his Tangle had to move sideways to get within 6-inch aura of this aura of the warriors, right? So that they can countercharge. They were wavered the previous round. So he had to move 6-inch. The warriors were something like this, right? They were horizontal, so it was much nearer. But after they charged, it became this way. Okay, so because he had to back up and slide sideways, he exposed his flank to me, and so I flank charged with the elo high and killed it. So just needing 4 twice on average, even in the woods. So if the game ended here, I would have 3 unit strength against his 1. It went on to a top. I would have 6 unit strength because the foot soldiers were still alive, right? So instead, there is a turn 7. So he moved his this 1 unit of warlock. It's a Brood Mother over to the opponent half. So he has 2 points, 2 unit strength, and the warriors killing the foot soldiers. Even if it moved 3-inch sideways, he wouldn't be able to clear. And so in the last ditch effort, he did a lightning bolt into the elo high, hoping to kill it. And once again, I think he dealt 1 damage and failed to rout. Right? If he dealt 1 damage, he would need 7 twice, and if he dealt 2, he would need 6 twice. And oh, there is cover, so this dice math is a little bit off. So that's the end of the game. Pretty much bottom of 7, I move my knights in to have more unit strength on the other side. That's about it. So let's talk about learning points. First, beware of the refused flank deployment. I was a little bit rusty in the sense that I have not fought against a player deploying in refused flank for a long time. So what is refused flank is where you deploy to one corner of the board, so that one side of your army is protected by the edge of the board, so the opponent cannot flank you from that side. That's why it's called a refused flank. Okay. So the Ratkin player did a very good maneuver, which is when his long frontage horde will get charged, right? He blocked off more than half of it, so forcing my knights to charge skewed to one side, and when he returns the charge, he doesn't counter charge, he declares a new charge into the flank of the knights. So this is a big mistake for my elo high. Reforming, you kind of turn your angle here and there, here and there, here and there. Do check whether you get flanked. Right, simple little tip over there. So now my opponent also did this very cool thing with his what's that called, the shock troops, which of course it came down to a gamble in the end when he moved his shock troops up and threatened the elo high and say charge me or be charged, and I chose to be charged, partially because that allows him that forces him to charge so far forward. His support units couldn't keep up. He couldn't. I did weigh the odds. I knew that when I pulled back my Elo High Regiment and he charged in 11.5 inches away, his Bane chance would not be able to reach, and that really increased my survivability by a lot. And of course, the Drain Life would not be able to reach either. So then the biggest takeaway for this game is to master this little technique or maneuver called the threaten and pullback. The distancing for threatening and pullback. That's especially if you're a faster force. So I do have an example here. So you have a speed 10 unit threatening a speed 6 unit, right? So this is a Forsaken Knights versus a horde of shock troops. So sometimes you just think, okay, if this opponent threatens 12 inches, I'll just be 12.5 inches away. But that's not where you want to be, because you want to be 13.5 inches in this instance. Why? You will know next. So right now, these Forsaken Knights are 13.5 inches away from the shock troops. And so what the shock troops does is it moves up 6 inches. Right? So 13.5 minus 6 is 7.5, and it says charge me or be charged, and at the same time it pops its plague pots. Right? And so because it pops its plague pots, it's not favorable for me to charge. So when I started that far away, I have the option, because as a flying speed 10 unit, if I choose to back up, right, fall back, it is 5 inches away. So 7.5 plus 5 is 12.5. So this is exactly what it is. I pull back 5 inches, right? So the initial 7.5 distance becomes 12.5. So when I pull back 5 inches, I'm out of his threat range, and he just wasted his pots. So if I were to be started if I started 12.5 inch away, this would end up 11.5, and he could still charge me, and that's what happened to my Elo High Regiment in the game. So if I just stayed 13.5, that would have been safe for me. So that is all taking into account that the opponent is not in a position to add the double, whether it's because of terrain or because if he'll be out of angle, he needs to turn, he needs to pivot once to go where he wants to go. So if he can still add the double and threaten you, then that's a different story. You need to add one more of his speed 6 to the equation. So I would need to be 19.5 inches away. So let's say he is able to add the double and threaten me, right? Stand 1.5 inches away from me, right? Then even if I back up 5, that will be no use. So in this situation, I need to add 6, so that will be 19.5 distance, so that even, right, if he moves 12 inches up, he will be 7.5 away. And once again, I move 5, I'll be 12.5 away, right? So if you threaten him in the first place, threaten in a way that he cannot add the doubles. That's why I angled this example this way. If he add the double up, he will be in a flank charge of the Forsaken Knights. Okay, but of course, being at 19.5 away means that he could just back up 3 inches and he'll be out of your charge range as well. So that's why you want to threaten him in a way that he cannot add the double to do this rush forward maneuver, right? Charge me or be charged, rushing forward. So this is the main takeaway of this game. Do take into account, because there's more than once I've been guilty of, oh, this guy threatens 12 inches, I'll just be 12.5 away, and then he just moves up in my face and I say, oops, now I can't run away. Okay, so that's the end of this battle report. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Do like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button. Bye bye.